Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. My boyfriend laughed the second my promotion pitch crashed on screen. Everyone else went quiet, forks halfway to their mouths. I am Riley, 25, and in that moment I shrank. Now writing this, I can still hear his laugh. 3 hours before that, I was hyping myself up. New title, new pay, first real step up. He watched me in the mirror and smirked at my outfit. You sure that blazer fits the boss vibe? I laughed it off and adjusted the buttons with shaking hands. Jokes were normal for us, teasing back and forth. Except that time I heard something sharper under his voice. I told myself I was dramatic and changed the subject. At the restaurant, my manager waved us over to a long table. Coworkers lifted glasses and cheered like this was my night. My boyfriend pulled out my chair with a little bow. Cute move, except he whispered, try not to trip this time. The plan was simple, I give a short presentation first. They hooked my laptop to the big screen near the bar. My manager introduced me as the future of the department. My cheeks burned while he clapped louder than anyone there. I stood up, palms damp on the glass I had gripped. Thank you everyone, I started, voice already doing that nervous shake. Across the table he checked his phone and hid a smile. I pretended not to see it and clicked to my first slide. The slide appeared, then everything locked with a bright error box. My cursor froze in place like it was mocking me. Someone coughed into a napkin and the room got very still. I tapped the keys once, twice, nothing answered. From the end of the table I heard his chuckle start. Guess she is better with pretty words than with tech. Laughter scattered around, thin at first, then bolder. My manager shifted in his seat while I stared at the screen. I forced a smile and made some joke about system updates. My voice sounded strange, too high, not like me at all. He leaned back in his chair like this was entertainment. In my head, I begged the screen to move 1 inch. My manager called for another round of drinks to break it. Someone suggested we skip the slides and just let me talk. He raised his glass toward me like a little spotlight. Try not to black out under pressure this time, babe. A couple coworkers laughed harder than they should have at that line. One of them caught my eye and then looked away fast. I swallowed, pushed air out of my lungs, and started talking anyway. I described the project wins from memory and ignored the dead screen. People nodded along and asked questions, actual good questions about next steps. My heart finally slowed down as I realized they still trusted me. He cut into one answer with another joke about me loving attention. I felt everyone glance between us like we were a small drama. Back then I told myself that was just his humor style. He teased, I rolled my eyes, that was our thing. Writing this now, I see how much the jokes tilted one way. Always on me, never on him, never on his own failures. After dessert, my manager pulled me aside near the bar. He told me I handled the glitch well and I should be proud. On the drive home, my boyfriend stretched his arms and laughed again. See, you survived, maybe now you will stop acting like the star of the show. I looked out the window and said nothing because I felt small. Later, I replayed his words instead of the compliments from work. At the time it just stung, now it feels like a warning. This was the first night I wondered if he enjoyed watching me fall. Coffee hit my printed agenda 5 minutes before a client call. His mug clipped the stack when he reached across the table. Oh my God, my bad, he blurted, already grinning a little. Ink bled everywhere while my stomach climbed into my chest. I grabbed paper towels and started pressing them down hard. Relax, you know that stuff by heart anyway. He nudged the ruined pages with one finger like they were silly. I nodded, but my throat felt tight in that stupid familiar way. The call started with my camera on and my notes destroyed. He shifted into view behind me for a second, then vanished. I pitched the proposal from memory and hoped nothing important slipped. Somewhere in the hallway he dropped something noisy and cursed loudly. One of the clients paused and smiled like it was charming background chaos. I kept talking and prayed my voice would not shake. Inside, I was half planning the rest of the call, half replaying the spill. That split focus sat in my chest like extra weight. When the meeting ended, I closed my laptop and exhaled slowly. He wandered in and flopped onto the couch with that lazy stretch. "So did your little coffee tragedy ruin the empire?" he asked. I told him it went fine, but fine felt like a stretch. He whistled low and smirked at the soggy stack on the counter. "Maybe the universe is just telling you to chill with the planning. You get weird when things have to be perfect." He tossed the towels into the trash and walked away, still humming. I tried to brush it off as regular clumsy morning chaos. Except it was not the first time his mistake touched my work. Or the second, if I am being brutally honest. Back then, I kept pretending these hits were random. A week later, I got invited to present on a small industry panel. Nothing huge, but big enough that my hands shook opening the email. I read the message 3 times before telling him. His first reaction was a low whistle that never reached his eyes. Nice, they finally needed someone to fill the girl seat. He bumped my shoulder with his this was a harmless joke. I laughed just a little, trying to keep the mood light. Inside, something slumped, like my win had just lost air. I asked if he was serious, more defensive than I meant. He shrugged and pulled me into a side hug. "Relax, it is exposure. Any exposure helps your career." The word exposure stuck in my teeth like something bitter. On the night of the panel, he stayed home with some excuse. "Group stuff is not my thing, you know that." I stood backstage alone and tried not to picture his face. I stepped out anyway, feeling like I was walking without backup. The panel actually went well, better than I expected if I am real. People came up afterward, asked smart questions, took my card. My phone buzzed later with a short message from him. "Have fun auditioning for LinkedIn Girl of the Month." I stared at the words while sitting on the train. No good job, no proud of you, just that jab. I told myself he was teasing and I was too sensitive. Looking back, that little text was another brick in the pile. The next hit landed on a random Thursday, quiet at first. I walked into work and found a message flagged urgent. My manager wanted numbers I had promised 2 days earlier. Except I had never seen that reminder come through. I dug through my inbox and finally searched my trash folder. There it was, opened once, then deleted, timestamped from home. My skin prickled the way it does when your body knows something. On instinct, I checked my phone and scrolled up our old notifications. That email popped into view on my lock screen screenshots. I remembered sitting on the couch next to him that night. He had my phone in his hand while we watched some show. He had been the one clearing my notifications because he was bored. When I asked him about it later, he barely looked up. "You always ignore that stuff till the last minute anyway." He tapped through a game on his screen while talking. I pointed out the timestamp and my voice tightened without warning. He finally glanced over and frowned like I was overreacting. "So now I am sabotaging your job because I cleaned your phone. That is where we are, right? I ruin everything." He tossed the device onto the cushion between us. Guilt hit me before anger could even stand up fully. I heard myself apologize first, which still annoys me now. I told him I was stressed and looking for something to blame. He shrugged and muttered that I loved drama when work got hard. Later, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and replayed it. In my head, I kept switching the roles like flipping channels. If I deleted one of his important messages, I would spiral apologizing. He deleted mine, then somehow I ended up feeling unreasonable. The small things kept stacking up in stupid, ordinary scenes. If I wore something new, he would call it brave with a smirk. When I practiced a pitch out loud, he would grin and clap slowly. "You really love the sound of your own voice, do you not?" I started double-checking locks, lists, and files before anything major. Not just because I am anxious, but because I stopped trusting luck. It felt like the universe had a strange sense of humor around me. Or maybe the universe just lived in my apartment and played games. One night I came home buzzing from a compliment at work. My manager had mentioned me in front of the whole team. I started retelling the moment, hands moving faster than my words. He opened the fridge and cut me off with a dry laugh. "Congrats, you finally convinced them you are not just a pretty face." He grabbed a drink and walked past me toward the couch. The way he said pretty face sounded less like praise, more like accusation. The air shifted and my excitement felt suddenly embarrassing. I stood there replaying his line while the fridge hummed behind me. Part of me wanted to call him out directly to fight. Another part pictured the eye roll and the speech about joking. I chose quiet and hated myself a little for that choice. In the shower later, I mentally listed every tiny dig from that month. The coffee spill, the deleted email, the panel text, the pretty face comment. It looked different when I stacked them together in my mind. Like a pattern instead of random chaos, which scared me more. Back then, I still gave him the benefit of the doubt every time. I called it clumsy humor and bad timing and my own oversensitivity. Now looking back, it feels more like a person testing limits. Seeing how much erosion I would tolerate before noticing the cracks. The screenshot landed while I was halfway through reheating leftovers. My phone buzzed on the counter, screen lighting with a coworker's name. I wiped my hands on a towel and tapped the preview. A single line of text glared back at me above a comment. My face burned before I even opened the full thing. The message from her was short. "Girl, I think this is about you." Underneath, there was a cropped image from a public post. Somebody had written a paragraph under a clip from the industry panel. I clicked it open and felt my jaw tighten. The comment started with my job title and my company. Then it moved straight to me, not my work me. She talks like she is reading a bedtime story to herself. Also, someone should tell her that blazer fit is a crime. Reading it, I could feel my shoulders curl without meaning to. I watched the clip play above the words, sound muted. That was my voice, my gestures, my awkward half smile. My stomach dropped and settled somewhere around my knees. I stared at the username for a long, slow beat. It looked random until my brain caught the pattern. The handle was brutally honest B. Nobody at work called me by my initial like that. But my boyfriend loved introducing himself like that, all playful. I am just brutally honest, blame the letter B. He used that line so often it felt branded. I told myself it was coincidence while my chest pounded. The letter could stand for anything if I wanted it to. Lots of people thought they were brave for being rude. Still, my thumb hovered over the profile photo with dread. I clicked through because of course I did. The account was set to public with a small follower count. The bio said here for reality checks and petty truths. Every post was some snarky paragraph about coworkers or girlfriends. I scrolled further and my pulse got louder in my ears. One caption froze me more than the others. When your girl thinks she is corporate Beyoncé after one panel. Underneath, a blurry photo of a stage that looked like mine. The angle matched the one my boyfriend had texted me earlier. The timing lined up with the night I went up there. I could almost feel the microphone in my hand again. I took a screenshot before my brain could talk me down. My fingers shook so hard my nail hit another button. For a second the share options popped up, then disappeared. I locked the screen and just listened to my own breathing. If this was him, it was not just teasing anymore. My coworker pinged me again while I stood in the kitchen. "Sorry if that freaked you out, I just thought you should see." That person comments under every post about our company. Somebody must be obsessed with you in a weird way. Her last message ended with a string of nervous emojis. I forced my hands to move and typed out a reply. "Haha, wow, yeah, that is creepy, thanks for flagging it." I tried to sound casual, like this was mildly annoying drama. I did not mention that the username sounded like my boyfriend. That felt too wild to put into words yet. All afternoon, my focus kept drifting back to that profile. Every email looked blurry around the edges, like I was underwater. He had always joked about me loving attention from strangers. Now there was a stranger online who sounded a lot like him. The overlap sat there heavy, while I pretended everything was normal. When he came home, the account was still open on my laptop. I heard his keys jingle and slammed the window closed. My heart sprinted like I had been caught cheating. He walked into the room and dropped his backpack by the chair. "Rough day, superstar?" he asked, stretching like he owned the place. I said it was fine and grabbed a glass of water. Every move felt stiff, like a bad actor in a school play. He wandered closer and glanced at the blank computer screen. "You practicing another speech for your fan club?" The words hit harder now that I had read those comments. I decided to test the ground in a small, careful way. Have you seen people talking trash about that panel online? He snorted and grabbed a snack from the counter. Obviously, the internet drags anybody who thinks they are inspiring. He took a bite and watched my face over the wrapper. I tried to keep my expression neutral while my pulse hammered. Yeah, I saw a clip with a harsh comment. Felt pretty personal, honestly, like the person knew me. He tilted his head and let out a low laugh. Well, maybe they do, you post everything everywhere. That last line made my gut twist. He tossed the wrapper away and came over behind me. His hand landed on my shoulder, just a little too firm. You know, I am the only one allowed to roast you. He squeezed once and walked off to play something on his console. I stood there staring at the doorway after he left the room. The phrase "only one allowed to roast you" echoed in my head. The comment about the blazer came back with a rush. He had made the same joke at the restaurant that night. Suddenly, the screen felt like proof instead of paranoia. Later, when he knocked out on the couch, I went back online. I reopened the profile and scrolled slower, paying attention now. There were older posts dragging a girlfriend for needing lists. Another one mocking someone for practicing presentations out loud at home. My throat felt dry as dust while I read them. One post mentioned a coffee spill before a big client call. They even used the phrase empire when describing her job. I could hear his voice in that word in my memory. It was like he had copied our exact morning and uploaded it. That was the moment my denial really started to crack. I checked the dates, counting backwards on my fingers. They lined up with days that already felt bad in my mind. It was like reading a commentary track over my own life. Except I had never agreed to be content for someone's jokes. I wanted to throw my phone, but my hand would not move. In the middle of that spiral, a notification popped up. The same account had just replied under another corporate post. Someone asked for a recommendation for public speaking tips. Brutally honest, B wrote, do the opposite of what that bedtime storyteller did. A laughing emoji sat at the end like a little knife. I took another screenshot, then another, like I needed a stack. Part of me felt guilty, like I was invading privacy. Which is ridiculous because all of this was out in public. Still, I felt sneaky, like I was stalking someone I knew. Maybe because deep down I already believed I recognized the author. I told myself I needed more than vibes before accusing anyone. If I said this out loud and I was wrong, I would look insane. If I said nothing and I was right, I was dating my own heckler. Neither option felt safe, they just hurt in different directions. So I did what I always do when I panic. I started planning little tests in my head. Mention something only he knew and see if it appeared online. Talk about a future opportunity that no one else heard about. If that account posted a hint, then I would know. The idea scared me, but not knowing scared me more. That night, lying beside him while he scrolled in the dark, I watched. His thumb moved fast over the screen, tapping, flicking, typing. Every tiny click sounded louder because I knew what might be there. I asked who he was arguing with, trying to sound amused. He laughed softly and said, just idiots who think they are special. I remember staring at the faint glow on his face. I tried to make out shapes, but it was useless. It could have been sports memes or an anonymous burner account. He turned the phone over and pressed a quick kiss to my forehead. In that moment, the person I loved and the hater blurred together. I tested him by lying straight to his face over breakfast. I told him I got invited to tape a podcast about leadership. Total fiction, made-up title, made-up host, everything fake. My fork rattled against the plate while I watched his reaction. He looked up fast, faster than usual when I talked about work. A podcast, huh, look at you branching into celebrity mode. He smiled, but there was this flash I did not like at all. Curiosity, something sharper, something that watched me a little too closely. I added another layer to the lie because I wanted a clear mark. I said the episode would not air for at least 2 months. The whole goal was simple, see if the burner mentioned it early. My heart thumped so loud I barely tasted my food. He asked when we were recording and if I needed a ride. I told him the host would send details tonight by email. He nodded slowly and tapped his fingers against the table. Nice, you will finally have an audience that cannot walk away. That line stuck, but I forced a laugh so nothing looked strange. I joked about signing autographs and waved my hand dramatically. On the inside, I was clocking every syllable, every pause. This was the first time I had lied to him on purpose. At work, I checked the burner account during lunch, thumbs shaking. Nothing new, no fresh posts, no comments about podcasts or recording. I stared at the empty feed and felt a weird mix. Relief, disappointment, and this heavy dread that I might be wrong. Part of me almost hoped the account stayed quiet forever. If nothing showed up, maybe I was just wound too tight. Maybe the username was coincidence and I needed sleep. I promised myself I would delete the screenshots if things stayed quiet. By late afternoon, I had almost convinced myself to drop it. Then my phone buzzed with a notification from that same handle. New comment under an article about women in management. My hands went ice cold before I even opened the app. The comment sat there like it had been waiting for me. Some people think being invited on one podcast means they are icons. Relax, nobody remembers the guest who talks like a preschool teacher. There was an emoji at the end, mocking and smug. The word podcast punched right through any last excuse I had. I had told him about it just hours earlier, alone in our kitchen. No one else knew because it was not even real. Reading that line felt like someone ripping the rug from under me. I stared at the screen so long the app dimmed. My pulse pounded in my ears and my fingertips tingled. This was not a vague pattern anymore, this was direct. I had baited a trap and something hungry walked right into it. I screenshotted the comment, then the profile, then the timing. I emailed the pictures to myself because I did not trust anything. Every click felt sneaky, but not doing it felt worse. I kept hearing his voice bragging about being brutally honest. For the rest of the day, I moved like a robot. I answered messages, nodded through meetings, laughed in the right places. Inside, I was rewinding that breakfast over and over. His questions, his joke, the way he watched me while I talked. On the drive home, my grip locked around the steering wheel. You ever have that feeling where you already know the worst? You just need one last ugly piece to admit it out loud. That was me, clutching the wheel and trying not to shake. When I walked in, he was already sprawled on the couch. His laptop sat open on the table, screen half dark in sleep. He glanced over and lifted his arms like he expected a hug. There she is, future podcast legend. How was the Empire today? I forced a smile and leaned down for a quick kiss. My lips barely touched his, my mind was somewhere else. I asked how his day went and he shrugged. Same nonsense, idiots online, people need someone to tell them truth. The phrase people need someone to tell them truth made my skin crawl. I muttered something about taking a quick shower and backed away. While I grabbed clothes from the bedroom, my eyes stayed on the door. I needed him distracted, busy, not hovering over that laptop. By the time I came out wrapped in a towel, the plan formed. He had headphones on and a controller in his hands. Volume high, focus glued to whatever he was playing. His laptop still sat on the table, glowing softly. My heart slammed against my ribs as I walked past it. I called out that I needed to email a file before I forgot. He grunted without turning, completely absorbed in his game. That was my window, and I knew it could slam shut fast. I lowered into the chair and touched the trackpad with one finger. The screen woke up with a small movement and no password prompt. He trusted his own space, that arrogant kind of comfort. For a second I almost backed out, guilt rising sharp and mean. Then I saw the browser tab already open in the corner. Little red bubble, fresh alerts, same familiar icon from my phone. My ears rang as I clicked it, almost on autopilot. I felt like I was pushing a door I could never close again. The profile page loaded with his handle staring back at me. Same bio, same stream of sarcastic posts, same tone. Except now there was a draft window open in another tab. My chest tightened as I clicked over before I could think. The draft was half finished, cursor blinking at the end. My panel clip sat embedded at the top of the screen. He had typed people only hype her because she fills their diversity quota. Another line waited under it, only half writ. She thinks reading in a soft voice makes her deep. I stared at the words until they blurred on the screen. I did not talk out loud, but one thought screamed. This is him, this is literally him, this is his laptop. I looked over my shoulder, terrified he might be watching. He was still in the other room, swearing at the game. I could hear the controller clicking like distant rain. That sound suddenly felt like a timer very close to zero. I hit back to the main profile and scrolled down fast. There were months of posts dragging a girlfriend for being ambitious. Complaints about her obsession with slides and notes in practice. Jokes about her voice, her outfits, the way she laughed at work. One post made my head swim like I lost balance. He described a promotion dinner where her presentation crashed on screen. He wrote about how nobody knew how fragile she really was. Then he bragged about being the only one willing to be real. Another one talked about spilling coffee on her paperwork before a call. The caption was short, just God humbles the proud in mysterious ways. He ended with a line about how she still thought she was special. My fingertips went numb while I read it. He had turned our life into a running joke for strangers. Every moment that hurt me was now content for him. My worst nights were hashtags and punchlines, organized in order. It was like watching someone live blog your slow mental breakdown. I clicked on the messages icon wit. How even planning to. There were threads with random strangers about dealing with a successful partner. He joked about needing her to be knocked down a few steps. One person asked why he stayed if he resented her so much. His answer sat there short and blunt, time stamped at 2 a.m. Because watching her trip is the only fun part. I covered my mouth, afraid the sound in my throat would escape. That line still echoes in my head when I try to sleep. I snapped a picture of that message so fast my hand blurred. Then another of the post about the dinner, and the coffee, and the panel. Each click of the camera felt forced, like my body moved alone. I kept thinking if I did not record it, he would erase it. Another thread showed him sending my photos to a stranger. Crop shots from behind, walking into my office building. He added little captions about how she thinks everyone loves her. The other person replied with jokes about fixing that attitude. Looking at those images made my skin crawl like it belonged to someone else. I had never given him permission to share my life that way. I trusted him with my worst insecurities, and he weaponized everyone. That realization landed heavier than any specific sentence on the screen. In one post, he asked for ideas on how to keep her in check. Suggestions poured in, cruel and smiling, all about subtle sabotage. Hide her reminders, mess with her calendar, mock her in public. Reading them, I wanted to throw up right there. I scrolled further and saw something from just last week. He mentioned deleting a reminder email so she would miss a deadline. He bragged about how she apologized to him for being suspicious. My vision tunneled while my eyes traced each word. That was the moment the ground truly shifted under me. Until then, I could pretend it was just nasty jokes. Now I had direct confirmation that he was actively undercutting me. On purpose, repeatedly, while smiling at me across our table. In the middle of that, I heard his game go quiet. Panic slammed through me and my hand flew to close the laptop. I minimized the window, returned it to the home screen. My heart raced so hard I felt lightheaded. He walked in, stretching his arms over his head. Done being a genius, he joked, or do you need more screen time? I kept my face still and shrugged like nothing happened. I told him I had sent my file and was going to grab a snack. He glanced at the laptop, eyes lingering for a second too long. Something in his look made my stomach twist violently. Then he just smirked and wandered back toward the bathroom. The whole time my ears rang like a fire alarm. I stayed standing there frozen for a full minute. Every instinct screamed at me to confront him right then. Another part wanted to run, pack, disappear without a word. But I knew if I left without speaking, I would question myself forever. So I waited until I heard the shower start in the distance. Steam hissed through the walls and water pounded the tile. I paced our small living room, hands tangling in my hair. I tried to string my thoughts into something that sounded sane. By the time he came back out in fresh clothes, I was shaking. I sat on the edge of the couch and stared at the table. He walked in, towel over his shoulder, hair damp. "You look like you saw a ghost," he joked, dropping beside me. I took a breath that felt like swallowing glass. I told him I knew about the burner account. I used the actual screen name and watched his face. For a split second, everything drained out of his expression. Then he laughed hard, louder than the situation deserved. "Wow, you are really deep into conspiracy land now." He leaned back and threw his arm along the back of the couch. "Where did that even come from? Did someone at work start drama again?" I told him I had read the posts, all of them. I mentioned the promotion dinner, the coffee, the made-up podcast. I said nobody else could know those details, especially the lie. My voice shook, but my words landed clear and sharp. His smile vanished, replaced by something flat and cold. "You have been spying on my stuff," he snapped. "That is insane." He stood up and paced across the room, jaw clenched. "So now I cannot vent online without you playing detective." That word vent nearly made my head explode. I asked how wishing I would trip counted as venting. How deleting my reminders and humiliating me in public counted. He rolled his eyes so hard it felt like he might float away. He started talking fast, words coming out like machine fire. "Everyone complains about their partners online," he said. "It is normal." He told me I was dramatic, sensitive, built for victim stories. He called the posts jokes that I was not supposed to find. I asked if he understood that he had described sabotaging my work. That he bragged about enjoying when I struggled in front of others. His answer came out sharp and bitter, no hesitation. "Maybe if you were not so obsessed with your image, I would not have to knock you down." That line hit harder than any insult in those comments. It was not about jokes anymore, not about edgy humor. It was about him believing it was his job to correct me. To manage my confidence like I was some kind of project. I told him nobody asked him to manage anything. That partners were supposed to support, not secretly compete. My hands were trembling and my throat felt raw. He scoffed and asked who told me relationships were cheerleading squads. He stepped closer, eyes narrowed, voice quieter but sharper. "You love pretending you are this inspiring figure everyone roots for. Someone has to keep you grounded in actual reality. Otherwise, you will float off into your little fantasy world." The word grounded twisted in my chest like a knife. Grounded for him meant humiliated, small, always doubting myself. I realized he did not see any problem with that. To him, my pain was proof that his approach worked. I told him about the message where he wrote watching her trip is the only fun part. I watched the recognition flicker in his eyes when I quoted. He tried to recover with another laugh that sounded forced. "Yeah, because strangers online love dramatic lines, it is performance." I asked who the performance was for, because it was not me. I told him he might as well have live streamed my worst moments. He shrugged and muttered that no one knew it was me anyway. The worst part was he looked genuinely confused, why that did not comfort me. I pointed at his laptop and demanded he open the account. He stared at me for a moment, then yanked it off the table. He typed in his password with sharp, angry movements. The profile popped up, clear as daylight, undeniable. We both stared at the screen like it belonged to someone else. For a long second, neither of us spoke at all. Finally, he turned the laptop toward me with a tight grin. "They're happy now, congratulations, you solved the big mystery." I felt oddly calm in that moment, almost detached. The thing I had been fearing was right in front of me. So I asked the only question that mattered. "Do you even like me, or do you just enjoy watching me fall apart?" He opened his mouth, started to answer, then shut it again. His silence said more than anything he could have spun. Eventually, he muttered that I was blowing everything out of proportion. That I should be flattered anyone cared enough to discuss me that much. Hearing that, something in me finally snapped. Up until then, I kept trying to find some misunderstanding. Right there I saw exactly what he was. Not confused, not clueless, just cruel and proud of it. I closed the laptop gently and pushed it back toward him. I told him I was done being material for his audience. He rolled his eyes and said I would crawl back after cooling off. He called me dramatic again as I stood up. I walked to the bedroom with my legs shaking under me. I did not grab a bag yet, not that night. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. trying to accept that the person sleeping next to me was my loudest hater. That night I barely slept, eyes open, heart racing in the dark. Every time he shifted beside me, my whole body tensed. I kept seeing that line about watching me trip being fun. By morning, I knew something fundamental had broken for good. I slid the zipper on my suitcase while he snored in the bedroom. Every tooth on that zipper felt like a tiny alarm going off. If he woke up now, everything would turn into a fight. My hands moved fast anyway, because staying felt worse than getting caught. Before I packed anything, I opened my email on the couch. I pulled up the folder where I had hidden every screenshot. The account, the messages, the drafts, the threads. I attached them all to a blank message and addressed it to myself. For the subject line, I typed 3 words. In case I gaslight myself. It looked dramatic on the screen, but it was true. I hit send and watched it leave like a flare. Next, I forwarded the same bundle to a personal backup. I did not plan on using it at work, not yet. I just knew how my brain worked after long conversations with him. Give it a week and I would start softening the facts. When the messages cleared out, I took a slow breath. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the air system. I checked the time on my phone and did some quick math. If I moved now, I had maybe an hour before he stirred. I started with the essentials, not the sentimental junk. Work laptop, charger, ID, keys, the boring things that kept life running. Then a few outfits folded fast, no careful picking, just enough. The suitcase filled quicker than I expected, like it had been waiting. As I moved through the room, I kept catching glimpses of us. A photo on a nightstand, a hoodie draped over a chair. My chest squeezed, but my hands did not stop moving. I was not packing a weekend bag, this W. As escape. Halfway through, my phone lit up with a text. A coworker messaged asking if I had seen the latest comments. Some account was back at it under a post about my company. My pulse jumped, even though I already knew exactly who it was. I typed back with fingers that felt strangely steady. Yeah, I saw enough, please just block them and forget it. She replied with a quick promise and a heart, then went silent. I stared at the chat and realized I did not owe anyone details. When I stepped into the bathroom, I grabbed only what mattered. Toothbrush, basic skincare, nothing that tied me to this place. His stuff crowded every shelf, loud and obvious once I was leaving. For the first time, it all felt like someone else's mess. I caught my reflection while shoving things into a small bag. My eyes looked wide and unfamiliar but focused. You are really doing this, I told myself in my head. I waited for panic to slam into me, and it never came. Back in the living room, his gaming controller sat abandoned. I remembered him laughing while those posts went up. It made my stomach roll, but it also lit something new. Anger that was not scared anymore, just clear. On impulse, I opened his laptop one more time. It woke up without protest, like it had done nothing wrong. I signed out of the burner account, then changed the password. I picked a nonsense string I would never remember twice. I did not do it for revenge, not really. I did it because he did not get to keep using me. If he wanted fresh material, he could find a different target. Closing that window felt better than I expected. I left the laptop on the table exactly where it had been. No note, no extra screens open, nothing obvious. If he wanted to perform honesty online, he could start from scratch. He just would not be standing on my life while he did it. Before I grabbed my suitcase, I opened my banking app. I checked my direct deposits and upcoming bills in quick scrolls. We did not share accounts, thank every anxious past choice. Leaving was still scary, but at least I would not be broke. I took a picture of the current balances and saved it. Not because I thought he would steal anything. Because I already knew he would rewrite the story later. I needed proof even for future me. My last stop was the kitchen, where so many digs had landed. I pulled a sticky note from the drawer and stared at it. Part of me wanted to write a long essay, point by point. Instead, I wrote 2 sentences in block letters. You turn me into content instead of a partner. I will not play that role anymore. I stuck it on the refrigerator where he would see it first. Looking at the words made my throat burn and my spine straighten. My phone buzzed again while I stood there. This time it was my manager, asking about a small report. I answered like nothing in my personal life was on fire. Sure, I will have it ready later today. Hitting send, I realized how much I wanted that normal task. Not because I adored spreadsheets, but because it was mine. My work, my progress, my effort, not someone else's joke. That thought anchored me more than any pep talk. Rolling the suitcase to the door felt surreal. Every tiny sound seemed too loud in the quiet apartment. I paused with my hand on the knob and listened. From the bedroom, I heard a soft snore and a small cough. I could have walked back, shaken his shoulder, started another storm. Demanded one more explanation, one more apology he did not mean. I stood there warring with that urge for a full minute. Then I pictured his face while he defended those posts. That image settled the argument inside me. He knew what he wrote, he trusted what he believed. He thought tearing me down was necessary balance, not cruelty. You cannot reason someone out of a position they worship. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. The air felt different, not lighter, just less crowded. I closed the door gently, no dramatic slam, no scene. Ending it quietly felt sharper than any screaming match. In the elevator, my hands finally started to shake. I watched the floor numbers change and swallowed hard. What if I was overreacting? What if this was fixable? The thoughts rushed in like they always did. Then another thought cut through them, clear and simple. If I showed those screenshots to any stranger, would they tell me to stay? My whole body answered before my brain did. You already know the answer, that is why you saved them. Outside, the morning was busy, people hurrying in every direction. No one cared that my relationship was collapsing at that exact moment. Weirdly, that helped, it made the choice feel survivable. Misery loves company, but so does freedom. I ordered a car on my phone and waited by the curb. The driver pulled up after a few minutes, name matching my screen. He tossed my suitcase in the trunk and asked where to. I gave him the address of a friend who owed me a couch. During the ride, I kept expecting my phone to explode. Call after call, angry texts, something. The screen stayed blank except for traffic updates and ads. It was like the universe gave me a small head start. Halfway there, I turned off my location sharing with him. My fingers hovered for a second before I tapped the toggle. We had turned that on for safety months ago. Now safety meant the exact opposite move. I did not block his number yet, I was not ready. I turned the volume down though and flipped the phone face down. If he decided to perform hurt boyfriend in my messages, fine. I just was not giving him instant access to my nerves. At my friend's place, I dragged my suitcase up the stairs slowly. My legs felt weirdly heavy, like I had run all day. She opened the door in old sweats and wide eyes. You look wrecked, get in here. I stepped inside and exhaled like I had been holding my breath for months. She grabbed the bag from me and kicked the door closed. I could tell she wanted answers, but she did not push yet. She just pointed at the couch and said, "Sit, I am making coffee." When the mug hit my hands, the words finally came out. Not organized, not clean, just pieces. The account, the comments, the experiments, the confrontation. Her eyebrows climbed higher with every detail. At one point, she put her drink down and stared at me. You know this is not normal, right? I nodded, but my whole body still buzzed with leftover loyalty. I kept finding ways to soften it even as I told the story. I caught myself saying stuff like maybe he was just insecure. Maybe he did not realize how serious it was. She cut me off with a sharp look. He knew enough to hide it, that tells you everything. Hearing it out loud from someone else hit different. It was like my brain finally got external confirmation. I was not crazy, I was not dramatic, this was real. I felt my shoulders drop like they were putting down weight. She asked if I wanted to report the account at work. My stomach clenched at the idea of that spotlight. I pictured people whispering, not just about him, but about me. For now, I shook my head and told her I needed space first. So we focused on practical steps instead of big justice. Changing passwords, logging out of shared devices, updating emergency contacts. She helped me write a short email to HR about online harassment. We kept it vague, no names yet, just a heads up. I did it because future me might want that paper trail. Because I knew this story was not done trying to follow me. If he decided to escalate or smear, I wanted receipts. Hitting send felt like planting a small shield around my job. Afternoon bled into evening while we made tiny moves like that. Finding a storage spot for the rest of my things. Checking if my name was on any leases or contracts. I kept waiting to fall apart and never fully did. My phone finally lit up around sunset. First a string of texts, long and frantic. Then missed calls stacked one on top of another. I watched them pile up without touching a single one. The messages started sweet and confused. Where are you? I woke up and you were gone. I need to know you are safe. I am worried. My friend glanced at the screen and raised an eyebrow. Then the tone shifted fast. So you just run away instead of talking like an adult. You snoop, you accuse me, then you vanish. Guess you got the drama you always crave. I let those words roll over me while my chest tightened. A week earlier, they would have hit like a truck. Now they just sounded like the same script he always used. It was weirdly comforting to recognize the pattern in real time. The last message sat at the bottom, short and childish. Have fun playing victim for your little audience. I took a screenshot and added it to my growing folder. I did not answer, not even to tell him it was over. Silence was the loudest thing I had ever sent anyone. It felt risky because I was used to defending myself. Explaining, negotiating, trying to prove my pain was valid. Not this time he got nothing to push against. That night on the couch I barely slept, but in a different way. I replayed scenes, sure, but they landed with new edges. I saw myself believing him when he mocked my achievements. I felt a mix of embarrassment and weird tenderness for that older version. I kept thinking I was just trying to love someone. That was it, that was the crime he found so annoying. Using my full energy on building a life and being proud. He wanted that energy smaller, easier to step over. In the early hours, I opened my laptop and started a new document. Not for work, not for HR, just for me. I wrote down every moment I could remember that now felt twisted. Every joke that was not really a joke, every accident. Seeing it in a list almost knocked the air from my lungs. Because the pattern became impossible to ignore on that page. And because I could finally admit one ugly truth. The first person who had to stop underestimating me was me. That realization hurt and healed at the same time. I had lowered the bar for my own treatment for a long time. Laughing things off, calling it teasing, calling myself sensitive. All just ways to avoid doing what I was doing now. In the weeks after, I blocked him on everything, one platform at a time. Not in a rage, more like closing tabs on a browser. At work, I poured into projects like they were life rafts. Without him in my ear, my focus came back fast. People noticed, which surprised me. My manager commented that I seemed sharper and more confident. Coworkers asked for my input, and I did not shrink away. Little by little, I watched my own competence without an audience. I would love to say I never doubted myself again. That I glowed up overnight and never looked back. Reality is messier than those cute stories. There were nights I missed him and hated missing him. Even now, when I see a nasty comment online, my stomach drops. It takes a second to remember it is not always about me. It takes another second to remember I am allowed to walk away. From strangers, from partners, from anyone who enjoys my stumbles. If you are hearing this and some part of it feels close. If you lie awake next to someone who laughs at your worst moments. If you keep bending yourself into knots to make their cruelty sound harmless. Please understand something I learned the slow, painful way. You do not owe anyone access to your breaking point. You do not have to stick around so they can feel bigger. You are allowed to pack a bag while they sleep and start over. You are allowed to choose a life where nobody prays for your downfall.